Hi, everyone. We're back with reJUVEnation. We took a little bit of a hiatus for the international break and with Easter weekend, but we're back and, not the greatest terms. Another tie in the books for Andrea Pirlo's Juventus, 2-2 in the Derby della Mole. Um, kind of what I think I expected. I went with 1-1 in the pre-match predictions. Tweeting on Twitter in preparation of the match. So I think I was a little bit. I expected it a little bit, and considering what we've seen this season, it wasn't too far in left field. This performance. We can just get into our guests here. I don't want to introduce Mark because he's been on, and he's not as exciting as my next guest, Jonathan. Let us know a little bit about you.
Hi, thanks, Monica. Thanks for having me on. Yeah, no, my passion for Juventus and Italian football goes back, I would say, best part of 30 years. I worked on Italian football here in England, and it was my first job. It was a real initiation into Italian football. It was a golden era for Juventus, obviously, with the titles in the 90s and the Champions League win. And so I've actually written a book all about it, all about my experiences in that decade of Italian football domination, which was obviously back then the greatest league in the world with all the stars. So I have written a book. It's called Golazzo, The Football Italia Years. It's on Amazon and Kindle, and it basically takes a look back at that iconic era for Juve fans. Obviously, it should bring back a lot of great memories, and for any fans of culture.
Awesome, and you sent me a copy of that, which I'm getting into myself. And for me, I became a fan around like 2006. So obviously, I wasn't a part of that era, but my dad was, for example, and he always tells us about you know these group of players in comparison, and he's like, not even close to what Juve was and Serie A was as a whole. So it'd be nice to kind of get insight on that from your point of view. So thank you for that. And like Jonathan said, check that one out, and I'll add a link as well into this video for anyone interested in that. Um, I think all things considered, we'd like to go back to those days. I think we're on a bit of after Benevento game, we tie this game as well, and you know I guess if we weren't this bad all season, I would give Pirlo the benefit of the doubt and Juve the benefit of the doubt, because you can be bad all season, but a derby is a derby, and everyone kind of shows up to play the derby. Juventus, when they finished consecutively in seventh, the derby against Inter, they always at least showed up for it, and you can see real fight in it, no matter how bad the team actually was. Um, but in this case, how many more excuses can we give the squad and Pirlo? Um, I don't know. Well, like, what do you guys think? Do you guys think it was a derby type of performance that led Torino on, or was it more of our doing, as it has been throughout the season?
I don't know. I guess I can go first. I kind of agree with you there. In terms of if the results were different in recent previous meetings with other clubs, I would maybe give Pirlo the benefit of the doubt, but it's quite obvious that, like, I don't know if you could even see any kind of growing tactics with what you see on the pitch. It just seems like there's like Sadi was, you could see instances of him trying to install the way he wants to play, and then but then not quite working out, and then individual brilliances probably brought home the title last year. Over here, like this season, it's just literally just been, now it's really just been Ronaldo and Chiesa just kind of finding ways to score on their own, really. And then salvaging a point or maybe a win. So it's been very poor throughout. So I wouldn't say it's a derby. And you're right, derbies can go either way. But I mean, I think the majority of Juventus fans probably would expect a result like this, or maybe even a loss, to be honest. And Torino stinks this year. Like, they're very bad. So it's even worse how they came out and played.
Any thoughts on that, Jonathan?
Yeah, I mean, I think what you got to look at is Torino are a really poor side. That this year in particular, this is a club that hasn't beaten Juventus. Well, it's beaten them once in 26 years. So, you shouldn't be going to this game thinking a draw, scraping a draw pretty much with a late goal. There's clearly problems, but the one thing I would say is it's not Pirlo's fault that Szczesny concedes 2 incredibly sloppy goals, but he doesn't exude confidence. I don't know whether that's his style on the bench, but he just looks, I'd use the expression, a rabbit in the headlights, because it was a very, very tough ask for him this year. We've had 9 years of titles. There were signs, I felt, towards the end of last season where that aura of invincibility was going. They were losing games and real sort of scraped over the line last year. It was very unconvincing end to the season. I think it sort of carried on from there. I think the whole Dybala situation, he's been a huge loss this year. And finally, we were looking forward to this game thinking, oh, we've got Dybala back, brilliant. It's what we've really lacked this season. And then 3 days before it, we get him and McKennie and Arthur doing their dinner, and it just feels like that sort of microcosm of the season.
Yeah, you made a comment about not being so, or sorry, you made a comment on Szczesny, and it's kind of hard to excuse the team when Szczesny's doing something like that, and he could have played a major role in salvaging something for us if it weren't for those mistakes. And if we think back to, I guess, my greatest memories of Juve, given that I've only been watching since 2006, for me the standard would be Chiellini, Barzagli, Bonucci, and then Buffon. And every time someone got past that defensive 3, you felt like, okay, now you got to get past Buffon. So it's like another wall to get past, and often the case, people didn't. Whereas it's so easy to get past our defense these days, and then you have someone who you can't even really rely on or trust as a last resort, which is not the greatest. And we've been hearing rumors about Donnarumma's issues with his contracts, and obviously being a Raiola client, it's kind of intriguing at the same time. I don't want to get too much into that, but if tomorrow someone would say Donnarumma is interested in Juve and you have to pay like $8 million a year in wages, would you do it?
Yeah, 100%. I think, I honestly begin to think, that crucial goal they conceded to Porto, even though Ronaldo jumped out the wall, I don't think Buffon would have let that in. It went right through his hands. I mean, people talk about the fact that Ronaldo didn't close down the free kick, but I don't see Buffon in recent years letting that through his fingers, and that he was sort of exonerated in the way because of what Ronaldo did on that incident. I honestly would think about playing Buffon on Wednesday night, because Szczesny seems having a real lack of confidence at the moment. It seems like he's made a few mistakes and it's just sort of weighing on his mind. But not just him. I mean, you look at the goal that was conceded to Benevento, the second goal that was conceded yesterday. These are just elementary errors and very un-Juve-like goals to concede. And from Pirlo's perspective, we knew that the likes of Chiellini and Buffon were pretty much coming to the end of their careers. And it was always going to be, as a terrible word, but it's a transitional year, because we've had all this success, and all of a sudden, the sort of the reliable, the old guard at the back were, not the players they used. Very, very talented still, but not young and not where they were. And it's a rebuilding. It's a big rebuild they need. And, they've got players like McKennie, they've got Chiesa, who's been I would say Chiesa's been the shining light this season. He's the one that's, excited people. But, they've got it. This is a massive rebuild for the club, because I think their planning in recent years has been really poor. We've had this era of invincibility with the old guard at the back, and with these defenders and this goalkeeper who you couldn't get past. And that's gone now. They need to rebuild. They need new defense. They need a new defense. They haven't got a reliable keeper. And I think Donnarumma will be a very good piece of business, because I don't think Szczesny is Juve quality.
Mark, I'd love to hear your comment about Szczesny.
Yeah, I mean, like I agree with you in terms of Szczesny. I've said this from early on in the season. Okay, one, right now he seems like he's in Arsenal form. Like it's the Arsenal Szczesny that seems to be between the sticks there for Juventus. They've been awful. He's conceded awful goals all season. Like he's been brutal. And I think Szczesny's a good keeper. He's not a great keeper. So, I mean, I agree with you there. I think he's been very, very poor. And I've said this before, I would have played Buffon against Porto. I don't know if I even said this on this podcast, or I tweeted it or something. I said I'd probably go with him. Like Buffon at 43 is better than Szczesny right now. He's probably not as quick as he is in terms of reaction, etc. But just in terms of even just leadership intangibles, it's you can't even compare. But I mean, to the same extent about Donnarumma, I mean, if you look at past teams that have won the Champions League, they haven't had like world-class goalkeepers really, except for maybe Neuer probably, and then Casillas obvious. But aside from them, like if you look at Milan's Champions League runs, Dida, I mean, he was a very good keeper, but was he like world-class, or Julio Cesar? So it's like you don't need a type of goalie that you got to pay $8 million a year for in terms of Donnarumma. Although if Juventus could afford it, I'd obviously take him, right? There's no question. But in terms of that, that's my take on Szczesny. I've never really been a big fan, and I lost all kind of respect for him when he laughed at. Now I can't remember the game.
It was against
fired up with it
against Verona, where we tied.
Yeah, Verona, where the ball was passed very poorly, and then it got ricocheted off into a corner kick, and ended up scoring from it. And he was just kind of.
They didn't score from it, but.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
Because I remember, I think you joined me right after the Verona game, so it was a pass back to Szczesny, and he kind of shanked at it. It went backwards for a corner kick.
Yeah, and he kind of laughed at it, and then it was just downhill from there. Like it seems like the team kind of turned off. And then they conceded, and then that was that, right? Another poor result. So I was kind of like, I don't think Buffon would ever laugh at a situation like that. You know what I mean? Like that whole, when they were probably going to win the title that first year, and he conceded that goal against Lecce, he felt absolutely horrible, because I could have switched in the last couple of games, right? Like I don't think that's a leadership quality at all from a keeper of Juventus. And that's my first point. And the other thing, I'm like, I agree with you to a certain extent, Jonathan, and I'm listening to your point about, like, I don't think Pirlo deserves any kind of scapegoat this season. Like Szczesny was absolutely poor again last night, for sure, right? And that Kulusevski back pass, like I don't even know if Kulusevski knows what team he's playing for sometimes with these back passes. It's just abysmal, like just giveaways and giveaways. But I mean, Pirlo has just been absolutely poor throughout the whole season himself. Like you said it yourself, like, is that his demeanor? Does he instill any kind of confidence, any kind of motivation to his team? Yes or no? Man, sometimes it seems like no, right? So it's like to give him a scapegoat, I don't think is fair either. But again, I do agree with your point that Szczesny has been absolutely abysmal, really, especially in the last few games and key games. So I mean, that's my take on it. But I'm not a big Szczesny fan. It's tough to go from Buffon to Szczesny, I think. So
to those points about the mistakes that have been far too frequent this season, especially a few weeks back, I said some sort of stat in regards to the first 15 minutes of matches and how we've conceded, and it's the same. We get into this match and it's the same right at the 46th minute, start of the half. So like, Mike, it's a point to what you guys are saying about Pirlo and instilling the confidence. I wonder what goes on in the half times to come out of a half and do something like that. Is just crazy to me. And it's not like it's one isolated incident, which is where I start to say, what is the coach doing? Of course, like you mentioned, Mark, Buffon's mistake in the Lecce match, that's the one, maybe only mistake that we made, I think, under Conte that season, individually. Whereas right now, yes, there are individual instances where, we collapse, but what is that down to? So for example, Pirlo, in his post conference, just to read a few things, and then I'd like to get your opinion. So he said, unfortunately, we keep making things hard for ourselves. We started off well and took the lead, but then we let them back in. We wanted to come out and play a different second half, but we fell behind and the rest of the match was difficult after that. So just a point to this, I feel like he is always saying this, we wanted to do this, but then something happened and we had to change. And then he goes on to say, we're suffering these lapses in concentration a bit too often. We must do better and understand that we can't lower our guard even for a second. So he goes on to say a bunch of other things, but to this point, who does that fall? Who does that fall on? These lapses in concentration, other than obviously the individuals that are making them. But when I look at a bigger picture, I think Conte would kill these guys, like would just strangle these guys if he was witnessing this. You know, I guess not every coach goes nuts on the sideline, and that doesn't make you a good coach if you're just screaming on the sideline. I'm sure that's not a requirement to be a good coach, but you know these how consistently this is happening, it must fall on the guy who's leading them, does it not?
Yeah, I mean, from watching from afar, I mean, we all see the games. He seems incredibly passive. You can't imagine his demeanor on the touchline instills much motivation and confidence in the players. I mean, these mistakes are, is to do with confidence. These results have been poor, and some of it is a confidence issue. It's Kulusevski. He's very young. It's not. He's very inexperienced. But I mean, you look at the likes of Allegri. You look at Conte. You look at their body language on the bench. They demand everything. That they get so angry at the slightest thing, and they just demand the best. And I sort of feel like Pirlo is letting this team drift completely. There's no sort of leadership. I don't know what, obviously we're not party to what goes on behind the scenes, but the general appearance, he's just stood there watching these games go by and not being able to affect any change or just provide any sort of motivation for the players from the side. And I don't know whether players might view him as, one of them, obviously he had this great career at Juventus, and whether they view him as a fellow player. Because when you're a manager, I've heard it so many times, it's not about, oh, hi, Andrea, blah, blah, blah. It's boss, it's Mr. Pirlo. It's changing from playing with these guys to managing. And you have to be a dominant, powerful figure. And I don't think he is.
You know what? Allegri didn't get a lot of credit, and I was always a big fan of him. Obviously, much like everybody else, I think when he initially got hired, everyone's like, "Oh no," right? Because of those last years at Milan. But I mean, if you take into account what he did with those Milan squads in the Champions League, I mean, it was there to be kind of a, you know, remnants of a good coach, but you know, everyone would always be like, "Oh, don't worry about it. Anybody could win the Scudetto with Juventus. Anybody, because of the team that they have." I mean, it's quite obviously that's not the case. You need a decent manager at least, and that's not Pirlo. So I love that Allegri's going to get the recognition that he deserves now, because you could already see it kind of with Sarri kind of waning, and then you know, now with Pirlo, just it doesn't even look like Juventus out there. I mean, to your point though, it is kind of a transition year, but at the same time, like if we go player for player, obviously that's not how you determine a team, but you know, with you know, with like Napoli and Milan and even maybe Atalanta, and you say like, are they that much better than Juventus? Like if we had a good coach, you think that we wouldn't still be fighting for the title right now, as opposed to maybe getting into top four? Like I think they made the bad choice. I think it really looked like Inzaghi was waiting for Juventus to call him in the off season, and they decided not to go with him. I don't think, no matter what, I don't think they would have been competitive in the Champions League in the long term of the year. But I mean, I think with a coach that kind of stressed still defensive solidity, which is all you really need in Serie A, which whether that's a fault or not in terms of how they play in Europe, it's still good enough to win the Scudetto, which is quite clearly what Conte has established at Inter. You know, defense first. You know, if you squeak out the 1-0 wins, it doesn't matter. All that matters is the points and that trophy at the end. So I think, you know, giving him again another scapegoat in terms of the transition year is still not quite fair, because they have the players, I feel, enough to still be at least competitive. They don't even look competitive anymore. They look like they're on vacation now, which is just horrible to see. It's like they really went back to 2010, you know, like pre-championship run in like a year, which is just awful, because it's not like, you know, they lost some of their leaders. They don't play consistently, you know, but I don't know. It's still Juventus. I mean, I can't, like, if you don't play for the shirt, then really you don't deserve to be on the team. And I think that's another talking point too. There's just so much to unpeel on this new look Juventus, but I'm not in the party that gives Pirlo any kind of I don't know, leash. I don't think he deserves it. Honestly, I don't. It's just been so bad constantly. And, you know, in the beginning of the season, you know, when Allegri came, he you know, he still kind of had Conte's team. And he took a little bit of time to instill what he wanted, while still riding what was already there made for him into like a winning team. So I don't know why Pirlo kind of came in the beginning and just decided, no, this is how I want to play: 6 forwards, 1 defender, and just like throw everything out there and get 1 goal. Like that's literally what had happened. And they dropped points early on, and then you would think that eventually it would kind of grow into what he wanted, but it's maybe even gone worse. So I don't know. I mean, it's probably too late to sack him. I don't know how good that's going to do right now. I thought he should have been sacked probably in December once they made qualification for the Champions League, because it was quite obvious it wasn't working for him. And you could see it, that it was just off and on, off and on, off and on. I don't know. Again, like, who would they bring back? It was another question. If they were going to sack him before, if they were going to sack him now, like they just really have to win on Wednesday, or else probably top 4 is going to be out of reach.
Sorry, I was just going to say, yeah, I mean, there's a report out this afternoon that apparently Allegri met up with Agnelli yesterday afternoon. I don't know if you've seen any of this. So
yeah.
I mean, that surely there must be. I'm sure they wouldn't just socially meet up for no reason. There's them, you know. I'm sure they're thinking about that. I think they're at a very crucial stage, because I think they stick with Pirlo. I don't see them getting top 4, but will they make that change? And obviously, this Napoli game is huge, and it's a game they can't lose. I mean, I think if Pirlo doesn't win on Wednesday, I think he's gone, is my general
Yeah.
opinion on this. I think he has to win that game, and I'm not sure he will. I think at the way it's looking, I think a point might be a good result.
I mean, I don't care how they get the win, because if they get out of top four, I think they've ruined everything they've built in 9 years. Like financially, they've already suffered serious losses, which I mean, pretty much every club has. But I mean, again, it's Italy, so they don't have a lot of money to begin with. So this is kind of Agnelli and company building something that really was Serie A in the dust. So I mean, like ending up in the Europa League would just be horrendous. And to be honest, they're playing so bad that they might just not end up in Europe. Like, I mean, like other teams maybe below them are losing, but they're also winning. So, you know, and Juventus are just drawing or losing. So, I mean, do the math. They might even end up outside of Europe if they continue with Pirlo. But, I mean, if someone else comes, I mean, instead of Pirlo, it is what it is. I mean, probably deserved. I don't think anybody would argue that it's that you know, they'd be shocked to see him get the cut. But I mean, I guess we'll see. I guess we'll see. I think just speaking on him as well, you know, Chiellini, Barzali, Bonucci, you know, Marquisio, these are all players that were, you know, pre-Conte were getting ready to get shipped out. Like they were ready to get, well, especially Chiellini, Marquisio, they're just like, oh, they're not good enough. They make too many mistakes. And then he kind of came in, again, set up a defensive structure where it was like defense first. They didn't concede basically any goals on that whole run. And then, you know, obviously they struggled scoring, but it didn't matter. They were still getting the results, right? You know, he would probably be a perfect coach for this team that they have now, since they are, I guess, quote unquote, in transition with guys like De Ligt. And I guess Demiral, I'm not a big fan of him at all, but it's like you're trying to build the new core defensively around him. And I guess Kulusevski, which I think is a very poor player, but you know, you're trying to build your team around these new players. You know, a coach has to somewhat allow these players to grow, right? It's not just, you know, you're getting results, at least allow them to improve. It just seems like everybody's gotten worse. So
on that note, just heading back into this match specifically, I wanted to, I guess, touch on, Mark, you say that we do have a good enough team to compete. So I just wanted to highlight, you know, some of the good within this team, especially within this match. And I think the obvious choice is Federico Chiesa. You know, he took, I think him and Ronaldo, you know, took the most chances or shots amongst the two. You know, he looked like, as he usually does, never stops running, you know, never stops fighting to get the ball back. And Morata, you know, made the assist for him, but of course, you know, that was all just him. Morata was kind of like the standing piece there for Chiesa to do what he did in that goal specifically. And I think you can argue, you know, best signing of the season for Juve for sure. And you know, is he our most important player this season? Or you know, what do you think about him? I think that he was, you know, the man of the match for me. And I think the worst of the match for me would be, you know, between Szczesny and Kulusevski, which I personally have a bunch of opinions on. You know, I don't really know where Kulusevski fits in on this team. I don't really know if this was a buy for Sarri. I don't really know where he would have fit on Sarri's team either. I would love to know what Kulusevski thinks his position is himself. I don't think he's a winger, you know, not even close to, you know, the Ribery, the Robin type of player. Um, when I think of a winger, you know, I think of someone like Douglas Costa, who is, you know, quick and quick with the ball at his feet and without the ball. You know, I don't think Kulusevski fits this profile. He can only kind of go one way, and often the case he's not quick enough to beat his defender. Um, to me, he looks like a player who needs to be lined up behind a striking or attacking force. Enjoying space and having like a free roam type of role. Um, I would like to hear your thoughts on, though I guess those two players or anyone else you felt like performed, well enough to wear, our shirt.
Uh, yeah, I mean, Chiesa, Chiesa's been pretty good all season since he's been at Juventus. So it's kind of, it's funny because last year everyone was just like, Juventus wouldn't have won the Scudetto without Ronaldo, and now it's kind of in the same breath. It's tough to say Juventus would be even afloat right now without Chiesa. I mean, there's, in terms of anyone else who's been good on the pitch, like, I don't know. I mean, Ronaldo's always kind of there, depending on what you think about him. At the end of the day, he's just a finisher at like 36. He's not really a build up type of player anymore. So I mean, you can argue for and against there. It is what it is. But I mean, in terms of other players, man, like I've said this before here, I mean, those are probably the only two players that I would keep, and De Ligt just because of his ceiling. But I mean, other than that, everyone else has been pretty awful, all season. It's been very, very inconsistent. I saw a picture that when the game kind of cut to where Rabiot looked like he was sleeping on the bench. So I mean, I don't know what that was about either. I think everyone just looks like they're on vacation, and there's still like enough games in the season where they can either have finish off with a decent season in terms of just, making the top four, or just having, a season that'll have a ripple effect in the future. Because you would have to think that if they finish outside the top four, Ronaldo's 100% gone. I'm not sure what kind of free agents they would, not free agents, but transfers they would be able to pull off in terms of, strengthening the squad. So it could be just a disaster. And the only two players really this season that have kind of kept them there have been Chiesa and Ronaldo. Everyone else has been pretty poor. Even De Ligt, who everyone kind of always heaps praise on him, hasn't been fantastic. Given how good he was at Ajax, you kind of wonder whether that's again to the coach. The coach hasn't allowed him to grow at all. So, I mean that could be a reason, but he's the only guy that I would give the benefit of the doubt for. But other than that, I mean, that's it really. That's for me. They've been very poor, so and it reflects that.
Yeah, I'm thinking that the players that have performed well, I would say Chiesa. I would put McKennie in there. I think he's done all right in his first season, and I think their whole philosophy at the club is to build the side around the likes of McKennie, De Ligt, and Chiesa. This is the young talent they're going to build the side around going forwards. Chiesa's been, I have to say, I think he's been by far and away the best player this year. Ronaldo sort of in recent weeks seems to have been completely on the periphery of games. He's not the dominant figure you'd like to think he would be. Regarding recruitment in the summer, there's the problem is the midfield. I mean, obviously recently the defense has been the problem, but over the whole season it hasn't been as bad as in recent weeks. But the problem is the midfield. Locatelli's being talked about as pretty much a done deal from Sassuolo, who would definitely improve things in that area of the pitch. And obviously there's talk of Pogba coming back, and would Dybala going the other way work. It sounds like they've got to keep one of Ronaldo or Dybala. One of them has to go, though, apparently, according to the financial figures at the club. And I think they're going to release Dybala. So if Ronaldo stays. But I think you put someone like Pogba in that midfield now, you're looking at a completely different side. There's no dominant figure in the middle of the park. And that's why we're being overrun in these games, because there's no ball winning, tackling midfield. There's no power in there that we had when Pogba was at the club.
It's hard to disagree with that. As much as we can benefit from someone like Locatelli, when you have, Bentancur playing as a regista, which obviously does not fit. It's promising, but it won't be enough. Locatelli on his own. We're obviously missing goals from the midfield. We're missing, those opportunities out from outside the box that we're so used to having Vidal, Pogba, Marquisio, moving in and out of the box constantly. And, a name that is probably unpopular, but you have to face the music, Sami Khedira. When he first joined, and it was the season, was it 2017, 2017, or 20, I don't know when it was, but the season where we were down by a lot of points, and he was the only guy in the beginning of the season, constantly getting it going for us, scoring, and being involved in those plays. We're missing that type of player. As much as his legs were gone, I think we can all agree his IQ was still there, and he was still able to make those runs in the box. And I feel like we're just missing a guy like that in the midfield, and Locatelli won't bring that alone, or won't bring that, maybe, I mean, you can argue even at all, that type of play and that type of spark that we need in the midfield. I feel like we have a ton of midfielders that kind of do the same thing and are not great at pretty much anything. They're just, okay, and they just go through the motions. And I'm not sure a profile like Awar, that a lot of people, this is a name, I haven't watched too much of him, but it seems like Pogba is a profile that we're missing in the midfield, as much as Locatelli would be beneficial for us as well, in my opinion. So I'm right with you there, on Pogba. You were gonna say something, Mark?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of Locatelli, I'm not sure why the club didn't go and get him in the recent summer, which they were talking about getting him. So I mean, that's a fail there. In terms of McKennie, I mean, you're saying we don't have a kind of midfielder that's going to get the ball, and I mean, a powerful midfielder like Pogba, sure, but even just a midfielder to go and get that ball, we have one. Except the weirdest thing is that he's just kind of always playing as like, a false nine-ish type of, false nine, trequartista, winger, but never really kind of in his natural position, which again doesn't make sense at all. And then again, I guess that's a coaching thing too. I'm not sure what kind of benefit he brings to playing off of Ronaldo and whoever else in the top. But I mean, why not just play him in the position where he's got to go and get that ball back and give kind of the team defensively some kind of strength and second cover. But I mean, that's neither here nor there. The season's already pretty much a wash, so can keep talking about this all day, but it's just not going to change the way Pirlo sets his team up at all, and that's quite clear. So
It's a good point. And I was gonna get into some of the, I try to incorporate stats in these pre and post matches, but we can see for ourselves with our own eyes without stats, kind of what's going on these days, because it's just a mirror image, game in and game out. But in terms of Pirlo's setup, I like to dive into that a little bit, and highlight, this game, 70% possession from Juve. You know, one of our highest, because I kind of look at these after every game. So one of our highest of the season, 90% pass succession. We had, but you know, considering all of that, you know, controlling the game quite obviously. We had 8 shots on target versus their 6 shots on target. So they controlled 30% of this possession, and you know, only hit the target twice less than this team. And we often play this way, yet you know, we still concede and we still don't convert enough. And you know, I think our best game of the season, I'm not sure if you guys agree, was, you know, that 2-0 win against Roma, where we basically played Catenaccio and we barely, you know, even touched the ball, had very few chances. We counterattacked, you know, for our 2 goals and won that way. You know, what is it about this style of play? I mean, I guess my first question is, like, how do you recognize Pirlo's tactics? You know, if you watch the game, like, what do you think that you're gonna see after every match? Like, you know, next week we're gonna see this because I can distinguish this about Pirlo, and the type of style he plays. And I guess the second part of that question is, you know, is he getting the best? Is this the best approach, or are these the best, you know, formations, tactics for this group of players? And how would you like to see Juve play if you're not a fan of this?
So I was just going to come in there. I think, you know, it's the same mistakes every week. You know, the style is, I think, is to get Chiesa in the game because he's the pace. He seems to, you know, our attacking outlet. It seems to all come through him because Ronaldo doesn't seem to be involved in the match at all at the moment. I mean, I know that goal yesterday was a really scrappy goal, but I can't think of anything else he did in the game. I can't, you know, it's all about Chiesa. You know, he's the one that's driving forward, and it's just like, it's almost like you want to shake them into action because they're just all. I get what you mean about them going on vacation because they were just standing there. Just there's no energy in the side. You know, it's flat. There's no, you know, there's sides that Allegri and Conte had. You know, the Pogba when midfield is surging runs. You know, and it's just so flat. And the season's gone, and you know, the best is top 4. I mean, there's the Italian Cup final, but you know, it's not really that big a deal. It just, I just sort of feel like they're drifting towards the end of the season, and they seem to have no idea. They don't know what the coach wants. He doesn't know his best team, and when a manager doesn't know his best team, you know there's problems.
Yeah, I mean, I said it before. I don't think they win that Coppa Italia either. That final, I don't think so. They're playing so bad. They're playing so, like, even against that second leg against Porto, I knew they weren't going to win. Like, what in this season has told you that they can pull that off? There's like nothing. And then to Monica's point, after that Roma game, we were talking and we just said that if they play like this the rest of the way, they might have a chance to push Inter and maybe catch up with them. If they just sit back, absorb pressure, and just kind of try and nick a goal, because they're always going to score 1 goal at least. Like, that's pretty much what they've been doing. They just concede right after, or late, which I mean, I don't understand how they do that, but that's just how they do it. That's pretty much been their DNA this season. And then, like, that's the part of the argument where I think, like, that's probably a coaching issue rather than a player issue, where they consistently concede late or just concede right after when they could kind of, you know, secure that. But again, they're trying to play this philosophy. Like, the thing about Pirlo is I don't know what he was brought in to do, but they were never going to win the Champions League with this team anyways. But they brought him in to change a culture that didn't need to be changed, really. or it could have been changed gradually instead of some complete revolution that just ended up right in the dumpster. So, I mean, all the points that are taken make sense. It's just it's been awful. That's pretty much their only tactic really right now, I guess, to your point, is that give the ball to Chiesa and see if he can power his way to the net, which is what happened against Porto really too in the second leg. It was kind of just like maybe he's gonna, you know, I don't know, push the limit and maybe break through and sneak a goal. And they did that yesterday too. It's just, I don't know, man. It's not, everyone complained about Allegri playing the most boring football of all time. Like this is, I don't even know what this is. It's just, go out and play and see what happens, basically, with no results. So that's where we're at, I guess, in terms of the season. It'd just be interesting to see whether they can salvage it. As much as I just want them just to be like, man, like, why did you hire this guy? Like, why didn't you go buy Locatelli when, it was what, 30 million, I think was the asking price in the summer or something, 40 million, something like that, which, I mean, to us sounds like it's not a lot of money, but I mean, in the soccer world, doesn't seem like it's a lot of money. So it's like, why don't you go get a coach that's at least capable of winning the Serie A, and go reinforce your players properly, and then just see what happens. And they haven't done that, so it's kind of want to be like, oh well, now we're out of the top four. Now everything they've built is in the toilet. But at the same time, you want to just hope that they don't lose against Napoli, because you're still Juventus fans and you don't want to go through that pre-2010 run, because that was a disaster. But I don't know. It's sad. We're in a sad state of affairs. If you've just become a Juventus fan the last 9 years, 10 years, you're just kind of like, well, I don't know what to experience right now because it's new.
The other thing, it was really interesting after the Porto defeat. Capello was on Italian TV analysing the game, and he was saying, all the players that came out to speak to the media after that game, Chiesa who came out and De Ligt who came out, and none of these big name players wanted to be seen after that disastrous defeat. Ronaldo wasn't showing up. None of them showed up, and he was making a big point. They're there in the glory times, but when things like this happen, they've had a huge disappointment in Europe. They just don't want to know. And it was quite evident that this point was made, that these big names just disappeared when the going got tough.
Yeah, I mean, I think to that point, it's like, normally Buffon has stepped up in these situations, but he doesn't even play. So it's like, so why does he have to come and account for what the rest of the team has done? He's technically not even a captain, really. It's Chiellini now, even though he's back. So I mean, why does he have to come and own up to a poor display? I mean, someone like Bonucci probably should have said something. I guess even Chiellini, but even Chiellini now kind of steps up and talks about it as well. There was one thing, I don't know if it was going to be a talking point or not, but I read something where a journalist asked whether, to Chiellini, whether, he and Buffon are the problems of Juventus, which I don't really understand, because one, Buffon doesn't play. So in what way would he be a problem? I know that, during the last kind of years at Juventus before he left to PSG, it was just kind of like, okay, you got one more chance to win the Champions League, one more chance. And that was always kind of like the storyline. So I can see how that maybe was a problem. The same way Del Piero's last year was kind of a problem, quote unquote. The way they kind of spun it. You can make an argument for Chiellini in terms of, is he a problem in the sense that, if he's fit, they're probably going to play him because of, how good he can be, like when he pretty much marked Lukaku out of the game. You know what I mean? So I see that, but then you make the argument, well, number one, who's available right now? Nobody. Number two, who's better than him right now on the team? I don't know, maybe nobody, So, I mean, if anyone's kind of the problem right now, it'll probably be Ronaldo, because everyone's kind of talking about how, like you said, he's kind of in and out of games. His wages are super high. So it's going to kind of be, that's going to probably be the storyline moving forward, I think, right? And it's going to become, I don't know, maybe a distraction. I don't know. But it's one of those things where it doesn't make sense. You know, if Buffon's playing, he's the first one talking, right? And so is really Chiellini. So, and it goes back to my other point, where the leaders that have kind of been leading Juventus throughout this whole dynasty are no longer the focal points, really. So they can't really own up to things that are going on when they're not really involved. So it's, again, they should have refurbished the team when they lost to Ajax in the quarters. I think that was kind of the end of the cycle, and they failed to, you know, bring in, well, it depends what side you're on, because they tried to bring in some players, they just failed, you know, Rabiot, Ramsey, Kulusevski, they tried to bring in these players, they just kind of failed. But that was probably the time where they should have refurbished the team and bring in, you know, proper players that know what it is to wear a Juventus shirt, you know, like you pointed out, Chiesa. I think the Lick too. They haven't done that, and now here we are. It's just,
I think you might see Buffon play on Wednesday night. I
hope so.
I wouldn't be surprised.
He should have been playing as soon as Szczesny laughed at that mistake, which they ended up conceding shortly after against Verona, which was already kind of like, oh, here we are. Like, I don't know, like, you have to win this game in order to keep up with Inter. And we've been saying that for weeks, and now we've kind of just given up. But it's like, after that, I would have benched him for sure, because I why would you laugh? It's just, to me, like, that pissed me off so much. Got me so angry. I'm just like, I mean, if you're trying to win the title, you should be as focused as possible. It's not funny. I didn't find that funny. I don't know if anyone else found that funny. Right. They ended up conceding again, drop points. It's like, well, coach, what are you telling your players here? It's not like, does that, like, that happens maybe in the banter area of Juventus when they were just awful when they came up from Serie B. Well, I mean, after the first 2 years, really, but, you know, it's like, what are you doing? I would have benched him then. And ever since then, really, he's been making some poor mistakes that have cost Juventus. It's just like, come on, man. At 43, Buffon's still better. And again, he has intangibles that Szczesny doesn't have. I would just ride him the rest of the way. Of course, there's going to be stories written about it all the time. It's like, you have to make a decision, though. Are you going to roll with Szczesny the rest of the way? Because if you bench him, it just becomes a problem, because if Pirlo benches Szczesny for Buffon, they're going to make that story about, oh, they're friends or whatever, and blah, 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 which is all just over exaggerated. It's going to ruin the locker room in terms of, like, Szczesny. It's like, are you going to sell him now, or then Pirlo has to go, because there's going to be a weird rift. It's just going to be problematic, probably. But again, I'm with you there. I would put Buffon in 100%.
One thing to say to, you know, the Chiellini slander, and then you mentioned Buffon is, you know, I disagree that they're an issue for Juventus, but I think them retiring this season will be an issue for Juventus. It's another 2 holes that they would have to fix in the off season that I don't think they can afford to focus in on, when, you know, there's obviously holes in the midfield on the left side, especially, that they shouldn't be having to, you know, now we need another center back. Now we need a backup goalie, to pinpoint on those players who, like you said, Mark, don't even take part in enough to, you know, take the blame for, doesn't make sense. And I mean, if Chiellini goes, you're left with, you know, Demiral, who's having injury issues, and, you know, I'm not the biggest Demiral fan. Sure, he can grow and has potential, but, you know, it'll be a rough way to get there.
Know, people acting like he's Nesta or something. Like, it doesn't make any sense. Yeah, no, I agree.
And then you'd be, you know, obviously De Ligt, and then a Bonucci, who is not known for his defensive abilities, but in the modern age of football, and how good you have to be with the ball at your feet, no matter where you are on the field now, even in the goalkeeper position, he's always useful, but it doesn't make you confident in Chiellini hanging up the boots at this point, having to fill another gap, and you know Buffon. These guys are leaders in the locker room, whether they play or not, and we it's kind of like an in between where um, people were yelling about moving away, or wanting to incorporate this modern football, this new philosophy, going away from these dinosaurs, yet they want them to step up and talk. It kind of doesn't it kind of whatever fits the narrative at that point. And it's kind of like, when we credit Pirlo. That Lazio win, Pirlo was a genius for playing Danilo in the midfield. And then, he played Danilo in the midfield against Torino. And then, it's the player's fault. It's not Pirlo's fault anymore. I mean, it's not, like the credit switches. When we do well, it's Pirlo. When we don't do well, the players suck. So, I mean,
Listen, it's a game of the finest margins. If Sirigu doesn't get a touch onto Bentancur's shot late on and it goes in, are we having this discussion? I don't know. So it's fine margins, fine margins.
I think we still are, though. I think we are, because I still think they were awful. And like, it's not because you know what you were getting with guys like Conte and Allegri, in terms of like, they're playing solid defensively and they're basically just squeaking out wins, and they were fine with that. And that's kind of what they were instilling into the team. Pirlo was brought on to play this beautiful attacking football, or whatever that means, and get points that way and win titles that way, which quite clearly hasn't happened, right?
Yeah.
And like, a lot of these late goals that Juventus scored to tie games up or win late, which they haven't really won late, but they're all desperation, where they throw everything out of the window and just throw the ball in and whip balls in, and maybe it gets nicked on to Ronaldo to tie the game, basically. You know what I mean? So
I'm sure.
I mean,
yeah, go on.
Go ahead. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that I think Pirlo would be under a lot more pressure if there were fans in the stadium.
Oh, yeah.
I think he'd be gone by now.
I think they would be having signs out there.
Yeah, I think he'd be gone.
Yeah. It's a good point,
actually. There was a sign leading up to this derby. About the money and actually show for something this time around. Just to conclude this discussion,
let me just say something on what you were talking about just before we hop off. I mean, fans think that Juventus are going to flip 13 players in one off season. Like, these lists that they come up with are just don't even make sense. I want to get rid of this person, this person, this person, this person. Like, where do they have that money to bring in all this new talent? Like, you're not going to sell Chiellini. Like, you're not going to sell Buffon, really. Like, these players you should probably keep. Okay, if they have a minimized role, sure. In terms of, if injuries happen or whatever. Although I don't know if there's a better goalie than Buffon right now that Juventus could bring in, unless it's Donnarumma. But
Donnarumma is the only one.
Yeah, like, it's just, you're gonna get rid of Chiellini, who could kind of slot in and pull out a performance against Inter like he did. Like, I mean, I don't know why you would want to do that. Doesn't make any sense. But that's just kind of my point there. Don't really understand the transfer gurus over right on the internet kind of saying that we should get rid of all these players and bring in who? Like these players cost, these wages that players ask for nowadays are very, very high. Buffon's cheap. Chiellini would sign a blank check, a blank contract if he had to. Like, you gotta take what you have. I think they're proper Juventus players, and if you look in the past, a lot of Juventus players would never take high salaries. Like Del Piero really never taken a high salary, or Buffon being top in their position, really in the world. So leave it at that.
It's a good point. I saw some things about, should we even keep Quadrado? Which
He's been like
doesn't
he's
make
been like their
sense.
best utility guy.
All right,
Like,
let's end it off.
yeah.
I just wanna, who should stay and who should go. You can just say stay or go. And Yeli.
Stay.
Yeah, he's got to. He's it's part of the tradition. The Agnelli family's been running Juventus for generations. So yeah, stay.
Stay. Just very quickly, stay because he built this thing, and like they were like going nowhere for when they came up from Serie B. Like it would be wild to kick him out. But anyways, go ahead.
Paratici.
You can go, yeah.
Sack.
Yeah.
Nedved.
Also go.
Yeah. I'm sort of
I
either
don't
way
know what
with
he
that.
does, actually, to be honest. I think he just kind of shows up to Champions League draws.
He's had a couple of moments this season where he stormed out and been quite petulant, and it's not really a good look for the club.
I don't know. I don't know what he does, but okay.
Pirlo.
Oh, 100% go. Should have been gone a long time ago. Not even a question.
Afraid it's time to say goodbye. Great player, but
breaks my heart why he would come back. Why would just come back and just ruin his legacy at Juventus? Breaks my heart, man. He's got nice hair, but that's damn good nice hair, but that's about it.
Ronaldo.
Tough question. But if we're just doing like kind of quick answers, I'd probably say go.
Go. Dybala, stay.
I don't know about that either.
All right. And I think just to end off a quick one as well. Do you think Pirlo finishes the season, and do you think we finish top 4?
I think if Pirlo doesn't get a result on Wednesday, he's gone. And I think if Pirlo stays, we don't get top 4. If Pirlo goes, I think they'll bring in someone like Allegri or someone similar. Don't know what deal, but I think someone else comes in. I think top 4. But I think with Pirlo, I think it's no.
I don't know. I said this before when I said that they weren't going to beat Porto. They didn't. When I said that I still think they're not going to win the Coppa Italia final, and I said that with Pirlo they're not going to make top 4. So, I mean, if they hold on to him too long, I don't know if there's going to be any kind of, depending on no matter who they bring in to catch the teams above, because no one's in Europe at this point, right? They're playing one game a week like everybody else. So if you're going to do that ASAP, because with him, they're not going to make top 4. I don't see it. Wednesday's going to be telling, like, number one, to your points, if they lose, he's probably gone, and top 4 may, depending on who they bring in, might be out of reach even now. But if the players play hard, then maybe they're playing for him. If they don't, then they're probably just like, this guy, he's just not doing it for us. So it'll be interesting. It'll be an interesting game to see.
I think it should have been done already. After this derby, I think it should have been done. I don't think we make top 4 with him. I don't think that Paratici, Nedved, and Pirlo should all go. I just feel like, in sports in general, it's usually the coach that takes the heat, unfortunately. But if you're doing all of this all at once, I don't know how I don't know how good that looks, or who would even replace Paratici at that point. For me, it's Agnelli stay. I'm unsure about Paratici, Nedved, stay, go, because I don't know who would replace them, and I'm Pirlo, go. So having all of that change all at once, I'm not sure how sustainable that would be. However, I think a lot depends on whether we make top 4 or not. But one thing for certain that I feel is we'd be more competitive with a more experienced coach. I think that Conte would even find, motivation in these players. I think the players are good enough, no matter what people say on Twitter. This squad is good enough to pick up points against Benevento, Fiorentina, uh, pass against Porto, etc. So that's my little conclusion on the few questions I asked. We're running out of time, so I'm going to conclude here and say thank you to both of you joining this long conversation, because it feels like a long season. It feels like a terrible one. Hopefully, we make top four, um, because I think if this is what people are calling a disaster, wait till we don't make top four. Then there would be no debate in Ronaldo stay or go, Dybala stay or go, De Ligt stay or go. I think it'd be really tough to contain these players with those aspirations, and the agents that they have and so forth, and the financial implications that we're already facing because of COVID. um so it's always Forza Juve. But thank you, Jonathan, for joining. Mark, I guess I'll thank you too. uh but yeah, thanks for joining, and take care, and everyone stay safe.